Hello, everybody. Welcome to Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. I am John Schmelk, as always on Tuesdays, here with Matthew Sytak, taking your calls at 201-939-4513. A disappointing 26-18 loss by the New York Football Giants last night. You heard my take on the postgame show last night. You can find that on the Giants Media Pass podcast feed. Sytak, is that up there, do you know, from last night, the postgame show? It is.
I posted it this morning.
Appreciate that. So you guys can go check that out on the Media Pass podcast feed. We were up until 1:30 on Bloomberg 1130 last night, getting that done. So I'll kind of give you my summary very quickly, and then we can obviously go back and forth on a lot of this stuff. But the frustrating for me, and I wrote this for Cover 3 for the website today as well, that the Giants offense actually did a lot of things well in this game. Only one other team had more total yards against the Steelers in the game than the Giants did last night. That was the Dallas Cowboys on I believe also a Monday Night Football game 2 weeks ago. Or was that a Sunday night? One or the other. I don't know. It was a primetime game. Whatever it was. Yes. Yeah, it was Sunday night. Yeah, because the Steelers lost at home. So it could have been Monday night because of the home winning streak on Monday Night Football for the Steelers. So the Giants moved the ball. They made big plays. The Giants were an explosive play waiting to happen in this game. Something we've been begging for weeks. They had 4 plays, I believe, that went for 26 yards or more. I'll double-check the number just so I have that exactly right. But Daniel Jones was making big throws down the field. He could have had a couple more if it wasn't for a couple of drops or guys not getting their feet in on the sideline. Giants with 5 plays with 25 yards or more in this game. Passes of 43 yards, 36 yards, a run of 45 yards, run of 46 yards. Pass to Theo Johnson for 25 yards. But this team continues to just self-sabotage themselves in the worst possible way, sometimes at the worst possible time as well, to take them out of touchdown opportunities, literally take touchdowns off the board, or to give the ball up late in the game. And I'll just go through a few of them. First drive of the game, Giants go down. They have a 3rd and 7. Delay of game penalty makes it 3rd and 12. They gain 7 yards on the next pass, and they have to kick a field goal. Next drive, they commit 5 penalties on the drive, 4 of which were accepted. They have a touchdown to Chris Manhurst, schemed up perfectly by your head coach and play caller, gets taken off the board because Malik Neighbors is sloppy on his motion on the play. Whether you want to blame him starting too early before everyone is set or not getting set at the end of it, whichever end of the motion you want to get mad at, you have to be set either before or after for that motion to be legal. Go later in the game. 2-point conversion. Daniel Jones does the right thing. Sees a defensive formation against a very unique offensive setup for the Giants. Tries to get the ball out there quickly. The rest of his team's not ready to go when they have to be. Malik Neighbors drop on a slant pass, dropping a ball that went over his head. I thought he throttled down on that deep pass down the left sideline in the first half when, I thought Pickens also kind of grabbed his arm at the end of that. No call. Just a number of plays here or there which either took scores off the board, put the team in bad situations in terms of down or distance, that turned touchdowns into field goals. You had bad discipline on the punt coverage to allow punt return for a touchdown. Daniel doesn't send Theo Johnson into motion to chip on TJ Watt when Illuminor was expecting it on the strip sack on the next to last possession. Then on the last possession of the game, Daniel doesn't set his feet when he tries to throw the ball outside to Devin Singletary. Airmails the pass, goes right to Beanie Bishop for the interception. So it's these little areas of focus on 1 or 2, in this game more than that, half dozen plays here or there, where small mistakes, whether it's physical or mental concentration and lapses, are causing big issues in the game, and you're taking points off the board against a good team on the road where you can't afford to do that and expect to win the game. There's so much blame to go around here. Protection, mistakes by the quarterback end of the game. Second half, while they had some chunk runs, I thought on early downs they got into a lot of second and longs, which hurt the protection in a lot of those situations. 11 penalties in the game. 11 penalties in this game. Defense gave up over 400 yards. They couldn't stop a runny nose in the first 3 or 4 possessions of this game. 19 plays of 10 or more yards for the Pittsburgh Steelers. 19! Just up and down the board, so many issues, yet they were still in the game at the end with the ball and a chance to tie it. if they can get a touchdown, a 2-point conversion in Steelers territory. Just very frustrating, Matt, for me watching this game. There's another game where they're in it. In some aspects, they played well enough to win, but in other ways, just so many mistakes and errors. And look, this is a young team. It's the youngest team in the league on a per-snap basis. I get that. It doesn't make it any less frustrating watching it happen in real time when you have an opportunity to win the game and then just mistakes by a bunch of different guys on different plays that end up costing you the game. That's what I got.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. When the word to describe this game is just frustrating. Because unlike last week against the Eagles, where the Giants were just straight up, outplayed from start to finish, the Giants actually, they did a lot of good things in this game last night. And, they put themselves in a position where they could have won this game. And, it was, as you touched on, mental mistakes on all three sides of the ball. You can't just pinpoint and put all the blame on one side. Yeah, the defense, they shored up the red zone, and they actually forced the Steelers to 0 for 4 on their 4 red zone trips. That's great. But they also let Pittsburgh drive down the field. And, Russell Wilson was, granted, Russell Wilson made a couple of just beautiful passes. Those moon balls we were talking about last week, he made a few of them. And all you can do is tip your cap for that. But the defense still let the Steelers offense move the ball, and this isn't a very high-powered Steelers offense either.
And I'm sure Steeler fans are saying to themselves, we had our touchdown taken off the board too on a silly face mask penalty, and George Pickens can't get 2 feet in, even though he's 5 yards in bounds on his catch.
That was crazy.
That was a really good play by Deontay Banks, by the way, to get him pushed out of bounds on that. But, the Steelers are yelling at themselves too, where we had opportunities to score touchdowns, and we self-sabotaged ourselves as well, which is why the Giants were able to stay in the game for so long.
Yeah. Look, both teams, I guess you could sort of say, made a couple of mental mistakes, but the
Giants had more.
The Giants, they did have a few more, and their ones turned out to be more costly than Pittsburgh's. But this team, you don't, obviously, I feel like we say this after every loss, you don't want to pinpoint or highlight positives because it was a loss. The Giants are now 2-6. There's not many good things you can say about that. The only thing I will say is that I liked seeing after last week, just getting completely outplayed from first whistle to final whistle, the Giants at least showed fight last night. They showed, that the fight that we saw from the team late last season when there was not much to play for, and they still went out there and won a couple of games. This is a team that's not going to quit. And, clearly emotions are starting to, I guess, boil a little bit as we saw last night.
And by the way, I'm okay with that, by the way.
Yeah.
You should be mad.
I was about to say, granted, the exact situation in which this happened is probably not ideal, but that the clip of Daniel Jones showing some fire and yelling, I like that. I liked seeing some fire and real emotion from him. He's such a stoic guy, and, I feel like part of the reason he gets so much criticism outside of, just some of the production is because he's very soft-spoken. He's never going to show that emotion or throw guys under the bus, which that part is good. You don't want your one of the captains, your quarterback, you don't want them doing that. But for him to finally just show some real emotion and genuine emotion, that I like to see. I'm sure that was a good thing.
If there was a prop bet in Vegas somewhere that at some point Brian Dable would have to try to calm down Daniel Jones during a game, you probably would get pretty good odds on that prop bet.
Yeah, for sure. And, even Dexter, there were times, or at least one time, where he was getting kind of heated on the sideline. Look, this team at the time last night was 2-5, on the verge of falling to 2-6. You want your guys to not be happy and to try to be lighting fires under their teammates' behinds. That's what you want to see at this point of the season, with the season going like it is. Now, again.
And by the way, Daniel sounded as angry as I've ever heard him in the postgame.
Yes.
That was as angry as Daniel will get. It isn't, throwing stuff and, cursing and all that stuff. That's not what he does. But you could visibly hear he was upset. And then Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence, I thought in the postgame, they were both, we don't see him on the radio, I hear it. So they were both verbally annoyed, for lack of a better term, and very frustrated and like, we have to get our house in order here. And both of them said Greg Van Roten had a very emotional talk to the team after the game. He's probably one of the most veteran starters on the roster. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. And the players, all to a man, were like, yo, this is a player problem. Like, it was pretty obvious if you watch this game, the coaches put the players in a situation to succeed in this game, and the players just were not able to execute the game plan at a high enough level, down in, down out.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the perfect example of that is that 2-point conversion, because that was I understand how the outcome of the play turned out. Obviously, failed pretty miserably.
And whenever a play like that fails, it's going to look bad. It's going to look like a mess.
100%. However, that was a great play call by Brian Dable, because if, I don't even know who exactly to pinpoint the blame on for that. Even Coach was asked that before when he spoke to the media an hour ago, and he didn't even I don't think he said that Daniel Jones did exactly the right thing on that play, because while obviously what happened on the play, Alex Highsmith runs right by that wall of blockers and disrupts Malik Neighbors. He can't even make the catch. But you had 5 Giants players there to block. I think it was maybe 2
or 3 at most.
Maybe 3 Steelers players.
And I think the third Steelers player was like 7 yards off the ball.
If Devin Singletary and the whole line, if they, I don't exactly know what happened, but if they reacted.
How about move when the ball is snapped?
Yes, reacted when Daniel Jones hiked the ball, turned and started blocking, Malik Neighbors would have walked into the end zone for that 2-point conversion.
That's correct.
But again, that's not what happened. It was the execution of the play. Devin Singletary, was making sure he was set with the referee, which that is something he had to do on that play. But you kind of obviously wish that he did it a second earlier, because then he probably would have, he got his head turned around right as Alex Highsmith was running by him. So a second earlier would have at least gotten some sort of chip block on him or something. But it was just poor execution at times last night, and some mental mistakes that I really think were the biggest reasons behind this loss. I think the coaching staff did do a good job of putting the team and the players in a position to potentially succeed, but it comes down to execution.
Couple of things I want to touch on. One, I thought the one real big positive was Tyrone Tracy. He was wonderful. And the offensive line, they moved Steeler defensive linemen that whole game. They created space for Tyrone Tracy. There were holes. After the last 2 weeks where they really couldn't run it against Philadelphia or Cincinnati, and we sat here like, wow, I'm really surprised the offensive line couldn't move those linemen at all. Well, they were ready to go here against Pittsburgh. I think all those questions we had in the locker room this week about, they're a tough team, they want to punch you in the mouth. I think that offensive line took that to heart. And they went out, they punched the Steelers in the mouth in the run game, and they dominated the line of scrimmage. Pass protection, another story. Chris Hubbard got the surprise start at left tackle. I don't know if you were surprised as I was when I saw him out there, because, I wasn't shocked, but there weren't any indications that Azudu was not going to start at left tackle last week.
I had just seen, maybe it was Sunday night or Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, Monday morning, some reports that there was a chance of that happening. So
I didn't even see those, to be honest.
So I guess I wasn't
I was shocked.
Totally shocked. But again, these were, reports from some of the beat reporters, which they don't always get it right. So I was a little surprised, I would say. A little surprised.
That did not go that well against Alex Highsmith.
Did not.
Sometimes your next best option is not a better option. So we'll see if they go back to the drawing board on that for next week at left tackle. Obviously, T.J. Watt is and that's what happens when you have 2 good edge rushers, right? You can't double team both of them. You got to pick your poison. Do you let Hubbard go one-on-one with Highsmith? Do you let Illumina go one-on-one with T.J. Watt? Pick your poison there, and it's neither one is one that you want to take. So that was the problem.
Yeah.
You want to go on that? And then I have one more thing before we go.
Yeah, I would just say that, the Steelers have a top-notch defensive line and pass rush. I would say one of the most talented in the league, with between Highsmith, Watt, Cameron Hayward. And up until, the last couple of minutes of the fourth quarter, I thought for the most part, they did a pretty good job.
Start of the third quarter was bad. You had the first 2 drives of the third quarter. The Giants allowed, I think, 2 or 3 sacks on those drives that led to those 2 punts. That's when it started. The first half was okay.
The first half was
not bad. The second
there
half,
were a couple of plays early in the second half.
The first drive of the third quarter, Giants had it. Let's see, 1st and 10. Tracy runs up the middle, no game. Then there were consecutive sacks by Watt and Highsmith to force the punt on that drive. Then the following drive, 2nd and 11, you had a delay of game, and then on 2nd and 16, Jones got sacked by Highsmith to make it 3rd and 22. So
yeah, again, mental mistakes. When it's 2nd and 11 and then you get a delay of game and it's 2nd and 16, that is a clear and obvious passing situation. Whatever team you go against is going to pin their ears back and come at you and get after the quarterback, which is exactly what they did. But in the first, I guess I was just thinking about the first half then. The first half, the offensive line did. Again, I'm not saying they did a great job. There were clearly some pressures on Daniel Jones even in the first half. But for the most part, considering who they were going up against, the first half, the O-line did a solid job.
Well, I think part of that was the coaching, right? There were screens, play action, rollouts, getting the ball out quickly because you weren't getting into many of those 2nd and 3rd and long situations because you were running the ball effectively on early downs. Yeah. You know, you mentioned that delay of game. Well, guess what? It was 2nd and 6 and they had an illegal shift on the play before that. So I actually had it to 2nd and 6 and they turned that into 2nd and 16. So it was even worse than what it was. So look, it is what it is. And then you have a false start, by the way, to start your next drive that puts you in a 1st and 15 hole. No wonder you only have 9 points at that point in the game. If you keep getting penalties and putting yourself into 2nd and long, 1st and long against one of the best pass rushers in the league. One more thing I want to bring up, and I thought this gave us a good 15 minutes of conversation with Casillas and I in the postgame show. Part of Dexter Lawrence's postgame yesterday, did you watch or listen to that, what he said postgame in the locker room?
I didn't see his media.
One thing he said, and the reason he's very frustrated, is that he believes that this team talent-wise is better than the team 2 years ago. And that's why this is so frustrating for him, because he didn't say these words, but I kind of sensed it from listening to him, that this is the best Giants team he's been a part of. And he really thinks this team had a chance to do something good. And they keep doing these things in games. It's like the bizarre world of 2022, whenever they needed to play at the end of the game, they would make it. Close games, they would make the play, they would win it. It's the opposite this year. Right? 1-score game against Dallas, couldn't figure it out. 1-score game against Washington, couldn't figure it out. 1-score game against Cincinnati, couldn't figure it out. 1-score game now against the Pittsburgh Steelers, could not figure it out. Now, did all the final scores look like 1-score games? No. But they were all 1-score games in the fourth quarter. They were, in effect, all 1-score games. And this team just cannot figure it out. And I agree with Dex. This team's better than the 2022 team. I honestly believe that. And they just, in too many times in big spots, and again, you can focus your blame on whoever you want to blame because there's been plenty of it to go around depending on the game you're talking about. They just have not gotten the job done in big spots at the ends of these games, and then little mistakes throughout the game force you into those close games at the ends where you're not up by 2 scores because you're making too many mistakes early. And I'm with Dex on that. That's why this is probably one of the more frustrating seasons that I've been a part of, Matt, because other years we've gotten through 5 or 6 weeks and you're sitting there like, all right, well, I just see this team not that talented and they can't compete with some of these other teams. They have no chance to protect the quarterback. They can't run it. They can't, whatever that situation or problem is in that individual year. You just see that they're outmanned and outgunned and they don't have a chance. We've seen that enough years. We watched Jake Fromm and Mike Glennon play quarterback, okay? So we've seen that. That's not what this is. That's why it's so frustrating. Because they lead the league in sacks still by 5. They have 5 more sacks than the team in second place. And they just cannot figure out a way to win games. And man, it's irritating. That's it.
Yeah. It is definitely irritating. I mean,
do you agree that they're more talented than the 2022 team?
Yeah.
I think so too.
I think so for sure. I mean, we don't have to go too far into that, but I definitely think the talent is there. Again, it's these mental mistakes. I mean, the Giants ended up getting flagged 11 times for 65 yards. One of them was the 12 men on the field defense towards the very end of the game, which I don't know if anyone asked Dable this after the game, but I think there's a decent chance that was on purpose because it was 2nd and 3 with, I think, 2:43 left, and they had 2 timeouts left plus the 2-minute warning.
I did not think about that at the
free
time.
timeout.
There is a good chance that's on
if
purpose.
they let the Steelers, and the clock was stopped, so if they let the Steelers run a play and they gain a first down, which it was 2nd and 3, chances are that they probably would have gotten the first down in the next 2 plays. It essentially would have been game over. Instead, it's a new set of downs, first down, and then they have one more chance to come up with 3 stops to get the ball back.
That's not a bad point, man.
I don't think anyone asked Coach this after the game, but watching it in the moment, at first I was like, out of a timeout, how do you do that? And it took me a second. I'm like, wait, there's a decent chance that was on purpose. Anyway, it ended up working, and they got the ball back.
Apparently, no one on the broadcast reacted to that like that, but the Manning cast said it was on purpose.
Oh, did they on the Manning cast?
Yeah, I mean, in the main broadcast, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman started ripping the Giants apart for how do you have too many men on the field right after a timeout? Well, it seems like that was strategy, but
well, honestly, I can't get too mad at Buck and Aikman because it didn't click with me either, to be honest with you. So,
regardless, though, the other 10 penalties for 60 yards, I believe, were all on the offense. And it seemed like most of them were, illegal shifts.
It's a good question. I think they were on the offense, actually.
Illegal motion,
illegal man downfield again.
Just
the Giants' penalty du jour
mistakes
of the year, by the way. No one likes having illegal men downfield more than the Giants this year, unfortunately.
But it wasn't. Did they even have were there any holding calls? Holding on the offense?
Runyon had the one, which I did not think was a hold when he pancaked the guy in the middle of the field. But yes.
And you would think going up against this front 7 of the Steelers, if they're gonna get 10 penalties on offense, holding is gonna have to be some of them. No, it really wasn't. It was just sort of mental mistakes and
delay of games, false starts, illegal shifts, illegal formation. There was one other illegal shift. I said illegal man downfield. It's procedural stuff.
And it was just surprising to see that because, granted, Pittsburgh is a very tough venue to go play in, and especially in a primetime matchup. I mean, we've all heard the stat. They haven't lost a home Monday night game since 1991.
Yep.
So it is a very difficult place to go play in and go win. However,
DJ Davison had a defensive holding on that final drive in the fourth quarter. Right. That's right. And I guess Jermaine Illuminor had an offensive holding early in the fourth quarter too, which might have been Oh, that was the one that was also downfield, I think. I don't know. But yeah, apparently they had 2 offensive holdings, Illuminor and Runyon. So
yeah, but regardless, the Giants have 2 of their 2 wins this season were going on the road to very tough road venues in Cleveland and Seattle. And we did not see this at all in those 2 games.
Even after last night, the Giants have the 10th fewest penalties in the National Football
this was
League. Top third of the league.
I feel like in terms of the penalties, this was an outlier game for them, especially on the offensive side of the ball.
It is finding yet a different way to lose a game.
Yeah.
I mean, really? I mean, that's kind of what it's been like. Every game, it's something different, and it's something weird. Penalties. Your field goal kicker pulls a hamstring. It's ridiculous things that keep happening. And look, that's the NFL. That's why football's football and why it's a great sport. Because you have to. It's a team game. All 11 guys have to be on the same page and do the right thing. Otherwise, stuff like this tends to happen.
Yeah, but final point just being I completely understand Dexter's frustration because, as you said, this is definitely the most talented roster that the Giants have had, at least in the last handful of years. For sure. And I feel like this team is just better than its 2-6 record. I mean, I know you are what your record says you are, but this just doesn't feel like a 2-6 team. It's certainly not a perfect team, and it is a team that definitely has some holes and some weaknesses. But I mean, as you mentioned, several of these games were right there within grasp late in the fourth quarter. And unlike in 2022, when the Giants seem to always make that last play to get them to win, it doesn't seem like they've been really able to do that at all this year, other than the field goal block in Seattle. Because that was, a field goal to tie the game, and they block it, return it for a touchdown. Other than that, it's just this team has been missing that clutch play at the end of the game. And that's been the difference between, 2-6 and I don't know, 4-4 maybe.
I agree with all that. I will say this though, you know me, I like using point differential to figure out where a team should be standing wise, and the Giants are 2-6, and right now their point differential lines up with a lot of the other teams that have a similar record. So the Giants right now are minus 58 in terms of point differential. Vegas at 2-6 is minus 66. Just to give you a couple of examples, Panthers at 1-7 are minus 147 already, by the way, which is insane. The Rams at 3-4 are minus 30. I mentioned the Raiders already. The Titans at 1-6 are minus 76. The Jaguars are minus 52. They are also 2-6. The Browns are 2-6. They're minus 48. The Patriots are 2-6. They're minus 73. The Dolphins are 2-5. They're minus 60. The Jets are 2-6. They're only minus 20. So they're probably a little bit better than what their record would indicate. But in fairness, at least in terms of point differential, with the way the scores have wound up, and a lot of that is probably the 22-point loss to the Vikings and the 25-point loss to the Eagles. So that's
47 of the 56.
Yeah, I think it was 56, right? So, but they just,
those
of
games
overall
count,
point
of course,
differential,
but...
they are 58. They are in line with the other teams with that record. But you're right, the majority of those came in those two big losses to the Eagles and the Vikings.
47 of the 58 points were in those two losses. Now, those two losses certainly count. I'm not saying just take them out, but in the other 6 games, which they then would have gone 2-4 in, it's only minus 11.
Right. So I think you could argue they should probably be at 3-5.
Yeah, at least one more win. Yeah,
But you could argue 4-4 if something goes right. I'm with you on that.
If they had plays sort of breaking their way like they did 2 years ago, I think this team would be 4-4. Now again,
look, they
haven't, so they are 2-6.
And that's the difference, Matt. They made plays in that year at the end of these games.
Yeah,
the 2-point conversion against Tennessee to start the year, the sacks and turnovers, the takeaway against Lamar Jackson when they faced the Ravens. They came back. They ended up beating the Packers that year too. So they made big plays when they needed to in those games. And in this game, they had the ball twice with the chance to tie the game. Strip sack. Interception. That's not how you win football games. All right, 201-939-4513. Hashtag Giants Chat. Big Blue Kickoff Live is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. The rapid reaction on the Giants Huddle podcast with Madeline Burke and Amani Toomer is up there. Well, Brian Baldinger going up a little bit later today. He also did a couple Baldy breakdowns. Not sure if they're up yet, but if they're not, they should be shortly.
All the breakdowns are up
they're
on
up.
Giants.com.
Perfect.
And the mobile app.
And I'm sure they'll go up on YouTube and the social media platforms at some point as well. He did a nice breakdown on Tyrone Tracy and Dexter Lawrence, two of the bright spots in the game. And then again, I'll have Baldy do more of a elaborate breakdown of this game with me. We'll be recording at 2 o'clock. Pearson should have it up by the end of the afternoon for your afternoon drive home. So make sure you go check that out. All right, let's do it. Half an hour, us, you, and your myriad of complaints. And we understand them. Let's go to Matt in Long Island. He will lead us off today. Hello, Matt.
Hey, guys. How you doing today? Thanks for taking my call.
We could be better, Matt. How are you?
Yeah, same.
This is a pretty bad weekend, man, between the Giants, the Yankees. Knicks lost yesterday. If you're a Jets fan, the Jets lost. This was as bad of a New York sports weekend as you can get. Only the Rangers won. That's it.
Yeah. I'm a Mets fan, Giants fan, so I guess. But listen, 12 points last night. The Giants, we've seen this before. They shoot themselves. When they get to opposing territory, it's like they go backwards. Like these mental mistakes, small mistakes, these illegal shifts, these drop passes by Malik Neighbors, these illegal full starts. It's like you're not going to win NFL games by scoring field goals. It's not just today. You've seen it. It's Dallas. It's like Commanders. It's like they're right there. And it's the frustrating thing. There's also another thing. I think the secondary, they played really bad last night. Like, I get Russell Wilson. He's a good veteran quarterback. They let him thread the needle. But it's, again, the Giants, they had themselves a chance to tie the game. And it's just they didn't execute right. And it's not just yesterday. We've seen it all year, really. And you're not going to win NFL football games. The Steelers, it's a tough place to play. It's a better team, but I mean, at the end of the day, the Giants didn't do what they're supposed to do, and they got to put this loss in the rearview mirror. They got very 2 winnable games, but it's all like it's just frustrating. It's like they're right there. It's like this thing has got to be cleaned up. It's week 8. These are things, the mistake you see by like week 2, week 3. Clean it up. I mean, I don't know who's to blame. I don't know accountability, but something's got to be moving forward and be better at this. You can't have these penalties that move them backwards in the red zone or opposing territory. Just frustrating.
Matt,
Thanks,
absolutely. Appreciate the call, man. And the one thing I will point out, The Steelers in this game with 7 plays of 17 yards or more. 5 that went for 26 yards or more. A couple deep runs in there. You knew heading into this game. We talked about it, and Lord knows if we talked about it, the Giants coaches knew this and coached the players up about it. Russell Wilson wants to throw deep over the top. Keep things in front of you. And look, Drew Phillips, we talked about a great rookie year he's had. He got ran past twice by Pickens and Calvin Austin. It happens.
I was going to say, last night was definitely was Drew Phillips, I guess, roughest game of his rookie year.
And he still had a couple nice tackles.
Yeah, he still made a couple of plays, which you want to see if a guy's having a quote-unquote off night, him still make a couple of positive plays. But yeah, I mean, it felt like this was the first time that Phillips kind of struggled in coverage. Like he was matched up against, I think, Pickens a couple of times, Calvin Austin, when I believe he was in coverage on Calvin Austin's touchdown reception.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, look, the secondary had a rough night. Russell Wilson played a great game. I would say Greg Stroman, who I just got on this team within the last couple of weeks, I believe. He actually played pretty well when going in the second half.
He gave up one play, but
Banks.
it wasn't that bad. No, it was okay.
I'm not saying he played like an all-pro or anything,
No,
but
of course.
he had a decently good performance for someone that kind of got thrown in there in the second half for Deontay Banks, which I don't know if we would need to go into that.
We should. I went through it. I did not. He missed a couple of tackles. One where Najee Harris hurdles him. I'm not going to kill him on that. You can't take on a 235-pound freight train without trying to go low. I thought that's just a good play by Harris. He did have a play where he played a little off on Pickens, then missed a tackle on a short catch. Maybe there's something in there that I missed. I didn't have a chance. I was trying to get through the whole game before we started the show, so I didn't get a chance to focus on him on all those plays. And he did have the nice play pushing Pickens out of bounds in the end zone to prevent that catch. So if there was a specific play in there, maybe it was like a missed assignment, so we can't see that, and the coaches know about it. We don't. I don't know. But the Giants did decide to make that move towards the end of the first half. I think he did not play in the final series of the first half, and then he never came back in. So the Giants made a move there. I imagine we'll see him again. But obviously there was something out there with his play that the coaches didn't like, so they decided to go away from him in the second half of that game.
Yeah, maybe it was a little bit of carryover from last week as well.
Maybe.
Because I didn't necessarily see anything last night that I thought deserved for him to get benched when, there were a couple of plays you could point at from last week where it might have made sense then. I will say on that, he did make a great play on Pickens in the end zone there. However, Pickens should have still gotten that second foot down.
Oh, of course he should have.
And if I'm Deontay Banks, don't you think it's better to try to make a play at the ball and knock the ball out instead of kind of just pushing the guy? I mean, it obviously ended up working.
Remember, he wasn't his man either. He actually came off his guy to try to help Pinnock, who got beat in the slot by Pickens. So.
True. I feel like most cases of a wide receiver in that situation, he's going to get the second foot down like that.
I agree with you. That's fair.
And better play might be to try to dislodge the ball. That probably was not why Deontay Banks ended up getting benched, because at the end of the day, he made the play that saved a touchdown. But yeah, look, what Matt said was right. Caller Matt, not me, Matt.
I was going to say, are we doing the refer to ourselves in the third person game?
No, definitely not.
Hey, Pearson's running a great board today.
But yeah, look, the secondary just, they struggled at times last night. Russell Wilson completed, 20 of 28 passes, finished with a 114.9 passer rating.
Well, he's looked really good, huh?
He
straight weeks now.
He has looked good the last 2 weeks.
He really has. Give him credit. And give Mike Tomlin credit.
I was about to say.
Very unpopular decision down there in Pittsburgh, and he made it. And it's so far, I think people are pretty happy with it.
You're saying the head coach who's never had a losing record in his 15 years being the head coach there actually knows what he's doing?
No, the fans know better. Let's go to Aiden in New Jersey. He's up next. Hi, Aiden.
Hi, I could be better as well.
I can imagine. Go ahead. What do you got?
Yeah, all right. So, why I say I think Daniel Jones played pretty well, and I feel like every time the Giants lose, I feel like everyone blames it on Daniel Jones, and it wasn't all him. It was, I mean, there were penalties, the drop, and what I have to say here is that, I mean, I like that he threw those 2 deep balls to Slayton. I thought he was getting it out well, but like I feel like there's been every game except the Vikings game and the Eagles game. It's really about missed opportunities.
Yeah, look, he had those 2 deep balls to Slayton, one in the first half, and thanks for the call. He had the skinny post to Slayton, then he had that little in route to Slayton. I thought the seam ball to Theo Johnson on the last drive was a great throw in a lot of traffic. He should have had another deep ball down the right sideline if Malik Neighbors doesn't drop it, the one that's put perfectly over his head. He maybe had 2 errant throws in the game, the one to Singletary that turned into the interception. He was maybe the ball placement on a couple of others weren't the best, but guys still came up with it. Then you had the little hole shot in the cover 2 where he threw it a little bit high and behind Slayton in the first half. But look, if you want to say for the most part Daniel played well when he moved the ball, absolutely true. If you want to take it the other way and be a fan and say, look, he had a chance with 2 possessions at the end of the game and he fumbled one and he threw an interception on the other, I understand you taking that view of it as well because you could see it both ways.
Yeah, definitely. And like, look, Daniel definitely deserves to shoulder some of the blame because at the end of the day, he is the quarterback. He touches the ball every snap on offense.
And still fewer than 20 points.
And yeah, and they scored 18 points. So he definitely deserves some of the blame, just like in almost any other loss. You cannot put this loss entirely on his shoulders, though, because that, like, he made some throws. He missed some throws as well. The receivers, as you mentioned, the receivers dropped some passes. I mean, the one to Malik, he probably would have just ran right into the end zone if he catches that, but he dropped it, and that goes down as an incompletion for Daniel Jones. So I don't think it would be fair to put all of the blame on him, but it kind of goes with the whole Daniel Jones primetime narrative. So I have seen a lot of people today trying to throw all the blame on him.
I was getting tweets.
I think is a little unfair.
I was getting tweets at the start of the third quarter that this was all Daniel Jones' fault when he got sacked on a 3rd and 11. And I'm like, guys, really? He literally threw a touchdown pass that got taken off the board through no fault of his own. Again, if you want to get him for the last 2 drives, by all means, do it. If he is, the one that screwed up, not sending that sliding that protection over, yeah. He threw the interception. Terrible throw. Yeah. Fine. But to say like the first 2.5 quarters or 3 quarters was mostly a Daniel Jones problem, I don't know what the hell you were watching, to be honest with you. I don't know.
Same. And like even after the game, Coach Dable, and he said it again today.
Yeah.
He actually said that the strip sack on TJ Watt, what he said was basically Daniel's fault for not sending Theo Johnson over in motion as like to help Jermaine Illuminor, which Illuminor was expecting.
And Daniel said it too.
And Daniel said it as well, which I guess I was just a little surprised at that just because we've come accustomed to Brian Dable never, ever pointing the blame at a player.
Yeah, I was surprised by that too.
But this time he did. I guess it was just too egregious, I guess.
Well, or maybe that was a conversation he and Daniel had before they went out there, and Daniel said, "Yeah, I want to take the heat for that. That's my fault." That could have been a deal where he wanted to take the heat for that too. I don't know.
That is definitely true. The one thing I will say that encouraged me about Daniel's performance, and I just hope that we continue to see this as the season goes on, is he's, last night at least, finally just taking deep shots, throwing the ball down the field.
Yep.
Obviously, he only hit on 1 or 2 of them, but if you keep throwing them, some of them will end up turning into big plays. It will happen that way. And, we've seen a lot of games. I mean, the previous 2 games, the Giants' longest plays were 15 yards and 14 yards. And it was just good to see them taking some shots down the field, throwing those, air yard throws 20-plus yards down the field, because that helps open everything else up in the offense. It helps open up the run game, as we clearly saw last night with Tyrone Tracy getting 145 yards against what could be the best run defense, if not the best, a top 3 rush defense in the entire NFL. So those deep shots, and we talked about this last week, it just opens everything else up in the offense, in the run game, and then in the short and intermediate passing game. So that is just one thing I certainly hope Daniel, Coach Dable, everyone, the whole offense will carry over into this coming week. against the Commanders and for the rest of the season.
Let's see it at home.
Yes.
We've seen this performance before this year, but we've seen it on the road. This is similar to how he played in Seattle, minus the mistakes at the end, right? We've not seen it at home yet. Got to see this in a home game. Otherwise, why are we doing this?
And he's got a good opportunity this week. I mean, the Commanders' defense has been playing better as of late.
But it's still not a top unit.
It's still not anywhere close to the Steelers' defense that Daniel was at least able to have some success against.
It is a little bit different. The Steelers play a lot more single high, and that was a lot the case in this game, which is why there was, I think, more room for some of those downfield shots. Washington, even though Dan Quinn in the past has been a big cover 3, cover 1 guy, he's played a bunch of cover 2 this year. So he's, I think, sees that he doesn't have the horses at corner to play a lot of man-to-man and have guys isolated in third of the fields and, deep coverage. So he's run a lot more cover 2. So I'm curious to see how the Giants adjust to that.
Last time they played, in case anyone forgot, Malik Neighbors had 18 targets, 10 catches, 127 yards, a touchdown, but 18 passes thrown his way.
Yeah, and again, why? Cover 2. So that was a lot of shorter passes in front. What was Jones's final stat line in that game, out of curiosity?
16 for 28, 178, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Passer rating of exactly 100.
Good touchdown interception ratio, but probably not as many yards as you might like in that situation.
And
16 to 28 isn't a great percentage.
You'd want a slightly higher.
A little more efficient. Correct. I'm with you on that. Let's go to Scott in Philly. Scott, what's going on?
Hey, guys. How are you today?
We're doing okay, Scott. What do you
got? 2 things. One, John, I remember when you did your one-on-one interviews before the season started with all the Giants players, and there was a lot of conversation about being able to face the quarterback, which turns into interceptions.
You're right.
What happened? It hasn't. I mean, last year we could turn the ball over, and we can't sniff an interception. I mean, there was nothing last night that looked close to an interception.
No, you're right, Scott.
What happened?
Yeah, look, they have not been able to create turnovers this year. I don't have a good answer for you. I think some of it is you got young guys back there. I think it's part of it. We've seen, and look, let's be honest about it. Xavier McKinney's not here anymore, and we see how he's created a bunch of takeaways in Green Bay. And losing him at safety, I think, has impacted your ability to take the ball away a little bit. I think Tyler Newman's going to be a really good player and be a low-cost replacement for Xavier McKinney, but he's not as good as Xavier McKinney is yet. He's a rookie. He's not going to be as good as he is. And that's just where we're at. Deonte Banks' issues have been, well chronicled in terms of getting his head around to find the ball in these situations and locating it. And the other second corner we know has been a question mark throughout the year in terms of who it's going to be moving guys in and out. So, Scott, look, it's fair. The Giants have, after last year, I believe they were either second. They're second in turnover ratio. I think second in takeaways last year, the Giants were. They have not produced those sorts of big plays taking the ball away, Scott. You're absolutely right, and I do not have a good answer for you why.
I mean, Deonte Banks also, he was never really known for being an interception corner. I mean, he had, 2 interceptions in 4 years at Maryland. Mm-hmm. So that was not really a big part of his game coming into the draft last year. And I mean, as you said, he's the Giants' top corner, and the second corner position's been a position somewhat in flux. So that doesn't, that's not a recipe for a lot of interceptions.
Yeah. The other question I had, and maybe I'm a little early with this, is we're 2-6, right? I mean, even if we, in the second half of the year, double our wins, we're 6-11. When do we got to start just thinking about what do we do? And I'm not blaming Daniel. It wasn't his fault, but I don't want to see him get hurt. And when do we just start thinking about playing young guys and getting better for next year?
No, Scott, appreciate the call. And look, I know we're going to start getting these questions. And I understand it. You're 4 games out of first place, and you're 0-3 in the division. So, in effect, you're 5 games, right? Because tying, you're probably not going to win that tiebreaker if you finish tied in first place because you're 0-3 in the division. So you have to make up 5 games with 9 to go. That's asking a lot. That's a tough ask. That's not what the coaches and players are going to think. We're talking math here. We can do that. We're on the outside looking in. If you're on the inside looking out like these players and coaches, you want to go out there and you want to win every game. So when the organization makes a larger decision, we know about the injury guarantee and all that, I don't know. They might never make that decision. I don't know the answer to that. I and again, Matt and I've said this every week. We believe that they believe that Daniel Jones is the best quarterback on this roster, and he gives them the best chance to win. I don't believe with 9 games left to play. It's a lot of football, guys. This is 2.5 months worth of football games. 2.5 months. They're not going to stop trying to win games now. And as a head coach, Brian Dable's never going to stop trying to win games. Players, they're never going to stop trying to win games. So I don't have a good answer to your question, Scott. I understand why you would ask it, but right now, I don't think that's where they're at now. We can maybe have that conversation after the bye and see what the record is. But as of now, they're going to put Daniel Jones out there because he gives them the best chance to win, and they're going to try to win as many games as they can.
Yeah, I feel like that question was basically just asking about Daniel Jones, right?
Of course,
without
yes.
directly saying
Yes.
it, because the Giants already are playing all their young guys. I mean,
there aren't any of the young guys left to play.
The rookie snaps, they either lead the league or number 2 in the entire NFL in rookie snaps.
Boy, so much for that being a timeshare between Singletary and Tracy, like we talked about 2 weeks ago, huh?
Yes, Tracy's just completely taken over the backfield, and
I didn't
as we saw
look
last
up-
night, you can see why.
I didn't look up snap counts. Did you?
I just know like the final touches.
What was? Well,
I mean, Tracy had.
I'm going to play a game. What percentage of the snaps do you think Tyrone Tracy played?
78.
Only 57.
Really?
That's why my face
Well, I
is
guess
looking this
also
way.
Singletary got all the late snaps
because of the concussion.
Tracy was out.
That's right. I didn't think about that. So that probably evened that out a little bit. Good point. I forgot about that at the end of the game.
But yeah, look, the rookies are already playing. The young guys are already getting significant playing time. So if the question's about Daniel Jones, like as John just said, we've touched on this before. We have no idea. We don't know if and when that injury clause is ever going to come into the discussion for the coaching staff. But look, I get now that the season is 2-6, fans are already starting to say, oh, well, let's just tank the rest of the season, get a high draft pick, and move on. But that's not, you don't want a locker room that has just fully given up halfway through the season, because that has a risk of carrying over into next year. You hear all the time about coaches wanting to build a winning culture. And, you know, all you have to do is go back, what was it, 2 years ago, the Detroit Lions were staring at a very similar situation that the Giants are in right this second, right now. And in the second half of the season, they won, what was it, like 7 straight games or 7 of 8 straight games. And they ended up, I think, either 8 and 9 or 9 and 8, missed the playoffs. But that carried over into last season, where they were one of the best teams in the NFL. And again, now this year, again, one of the best teams in the NFL. I'm not saying the Giants, I'm not trying to compare the Giants to the Lions, because those are two, obviously, very different teams, different rosters, all that. But my point just being is, Dan Campbell refused to let his locker room quit 2 years ago when they were in a very similar situation to the Giants. They actually went out and got hot and became basically the hottest team in the NFL in the second half of the season. And that clearly carried over into the 2023 season, where they were one of the best teams in the NFL. So you, especially with a team full of young guys and leaders who you obviously expect to be around here for years to come, you want to start winning games and building a winning culture. I know it's easy to say, oh, if you just lose out, you'll get the number 1 draft pick and then pick whoever you want. But that's not what this team, with the players, the coaches, that's not any single one of them is concerned about. That is the furthest thing from their mind. They're here to win football games, and they're going to continue to try and do their absolute best to win football games until that is no longer, till the season's done.
Yeah, like Brian Dable was even asked about the trade deadline today during his conference call, and he's like, yeah, guys, I'm just trying to beat the Commanders. I'm not thinking about that. And that's 2 weeks away. So Lord knows he's not thinking about some kind of clause in a contract that can impact your salary cap next year. It's the last thing on
When
Brian
is the trade
Dable's
deadline
mind.
exactly?
That's a good question. Why don't you look it up? I don't know. So it was 9 steps for Singletary at the end of the game after Tracy's injury. So before the injury, he was about a 2/3 to 1/3 split, around 66 to 33%, give or take. While you look that up, let's go to Marcus in Arizona. He's up next. Hi, Marcus.
Hey, what's up, guys? Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
All right, so I'm breaking my rule of not calling during the season because I'm severely disappointed in this team. So my trip to the Cowboys game on Thursday night that I talked to you guys about was amazing. Very well put together Thursday night football game. I loved it. I don't know what's going on with this team, but it's been like 10 years of going to the same restaurant 17 times a year and getting back. I don't know what the problem is, and I don't know what the fix is, but I just want to know why it's been so bad for 10 years, minus 2022. And I don't want anybody to get fired. I want them to finish out their contract. But I feel like people need to realize that there's no help coming at quarterback until the year after next. And I feel like we just need to keep rocking with this, and then in 2 years, trade the farm for Archie Manning to draft Archie. And I just don't know, but it's getting to the point to where I don't even know if I want to be a Giants fan anymore, man. And it's just, it went from disappointing to depressing. And there's no reason why. Like, supposedly everything's changed, but there's only two common denominators in the last 10, 20 years. So, I don't know. Can anybody tell me what's gonna make it better? Like, what's the fix?
Marcus, it's a great question, and we could sit here for an hour and talk about it and probably not still come up with the right answer. Look, I think it always comes down to roster quality in the end. That's always the most important thing. That's why when over the last 10 years, all these fans call up and they say, fire this guy, fire that guy. And I'm like, guys, you can change the coach. If the roster's not better, it's not going to matter. And as you change coached every 2 years for 6 straight years, guess what? The coach didn't matter.
The only time we saw it did have an impact was obviously with this current regime and Coach Dable's first season.
And then that disappeared the following year when guys on the roster got hurt. The roster wasn't as good, and then all of a sudden the coach didn't matter as much anymore. It's the players, guys. And they're trying to build a roster here. It takes time. Should it be a 10-year roster rebuild process? No, it should not. They've had 3 different general managers over that period of time as well, which is part of it, which is why I think you want to try to give this group as much of a runway as possible to get this done. And look, you have to draft well. And that's always going to be what I come back to. That to me, and that's why we do so much draft work in the offseason here and why I enjoy doing it so much. Because in the end, you need to have really good players on rookie contracts if you're going to be a successful NFL team. That's how this works. Now, you might go through a period of 3 or 4 years where you draft so well and then you sign those guys to extensions where you can survive a couple of bad drafts. But for the most part, you got to draft well to be successful. And I think the early returns on this draft class have been positive. The last couple of years, there's been some good, there's been some bad. Based on what we've seen so far, all those players are still young, haven't even finished their third straight year yet. But that's how you build a roster, by drafting well. Just continue to draft well. Continue to spend wisely in free agency. Don't try to build your team through free agency. Try to build and supplement your young core that you draft through free agency. And, of course, the number one thing is find a star quarterback. If you want to sustain success in this league, look at the teams that have been really good over the past 10 years consistently. Look who their quarterback is. And there's a straight line there. And again, that's not to say this is all Daniel Jones' fault and he hasn't had issues and things haven't been helped. But the Giants haven't had all-pro level quarterback play in that 10-year span you're talking about. You know, you towards the end of Eli Manning's career when he was getting older. I think you had the couple good Eli Manning years in that last 10-year range, but then the offensive line was falling apart. He didn't have a lot of help around him and all that sort of stuff. So that's my overarching look at why. The problem is that, and Joe Shane said this to me when I basically asked him this question at the Combine last year, and my question was basically, well, do you just keep throwing darts until you find, like, the guy? Like, you know, you're Josh Allen when he was in Buffalo, right? And he goes, yeah, but there's only so many of those guys. And that's the trick. That's the trick. There's only so many of those guys, and they're really hard to find. The Panthers traded the farm because they thought they had that guy 2 years ago in Bryce Young. How'd that work? Not so good. And I love Bryce Young. Everybody loved Bryce Young. How could you? You watched him in college. He was phenomenal. Hasn't worked. Look, It's hard. If it was easy to do this, everyone would do it. There's a finite number of all-pro quarterbacks out there. It's just the way it goes, right? Daniel played well 2 years ago, got him a playoff win. At times, he's played well this year. And you see the flashes, you're like, oh, man, if he could sustain that, that's great, right? So that's my 10,000-foot view of how you sustain success in the National Football League, but it's a lot easier for me to say it than for the GMs and head coaches in the league to execute it, because there's only so many of those guys out there. That's it.
Definitely. And I mean, I know a lot of fans, especially this year, have been looking at, the class of rookie quarterbacks and being like, look what a new quarterback could do. And while this year's rookie class of quarterbacks they've definitely played well. There's no doubt about it. Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Drake May has shown some flashes the last couple of weeks. Bo Nix is starting to come along.
He's been okay.
J.J. McCarthy in the preseason. Again, it was one preseason game. So
how about we say the jury's still out on Penix and McCarthy?
Yes, for sure. But even if you wanted to say, let's just throw Penix and McCarthy as like they've shown encouraging signs in the preseason. Let's just, for the sake of this argument, throw that in there. Okay, so you have a great class of rookie quarterbacks this year. But then look at the last couple of years. I mean, we've seen, especially this past offseason or the last year, some guys from like the 2020 draft class, the 2021 draft class, sign these mega extensions, and their level of play is not even anywhere close to what their salary is.
Trevor Lawrence.
Tua. I mean, Justin Herbert has now, the last 2 weeks, started to sort of pick it up.
No, but he hasn't lived up to the contract either. You're right.
No. So, and that's only talking about the guys that have gotten extensions. What was it, the 2021 draft class, where every single guy is no longer on the team that drafted him?
And because, by the way, the situation around the quarterback matters too. That's why it took Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield so much time to find the spot that worked for them. It's not easy. Dude, Baker Mayfield's having a good year. Every team in the league had a chance to get that guy.
Yep.
As a free agent.
Sam Darnold
Every
too.
single team. Same for Sam Darnold. It's tough. It's not easy. It's hard. It's hard.
It definitely is hard. Now, if you want some, I guess, reasons to be encouraged about the future, I will say that, at least me personally, I have a lot of faith in both Joe Shane and Brian Dable, where if they decide in this upcoming draft that they want to go after one of the quarterbacks, I am pretty confident that they will know what they're doing and target the right guy. I mean, we've all seen the clip from Hard Knocks over the summer where Brian Dable was basically said, like, yeah, I would trade up for Jaden Daniels, and look what Jaden Daniels has done this year. Now, he was the second overall pick. Doesn't seem like that was, that much of a stretch to say that.
Well, based on Joe Shane's call to the Patriots, they'd every
I was
interest in doing
the
that
same
too.
thing with Drake May. So I do have confidence that if that's the route they decide to go this offseason, I have confidence that they will identify and target the right quarterback. Whether or not they end up getting the guy, as we just saw this past draft, that may not be the case, but I think that they will be able to identify the right, quarterback or two and go after those guys, and hopefully it works out. I would say that this rookie class, the Giants rookie class right now, have already shown 8 games into their NFL careers that they have the potential of being like a core foundation draft class for the future of this team. I mean, you look at some of the teams in the NFC that have sort of turned it around the last couple of years. There's 2 teams in particular that come to mind to me: the Seattle Seahawks and the Los Angeles Rams.
I'm going to throw the Lions in there too. Of
the Lions really well. As well. Those 3 NFC teams. The Seahawks, I think it was going into 2 years ago, everyone was saying like, oh, this team's going to be one of the worst in the NFL. They're going with Geno Smith at quarterback. What are they doing? Well, the reason Geno played great, but the reason the Seahawks played so well that season was because they had rookies that immediately came in from day one and were big-time contributors. That was like a franchise-altering draft class. Same thing with the Rams. I mean, obviously, Puka Nacua is a 5th-round pick last year. He was just one of the great draft picks that the Rams had last year. Lions, as you mentioned, have had some great draft classes in the last, I would say, 2 to 3 drafts. So this 2024 draft class of the Giants, I'm not saying they're there yet, but they have the potential to be that sort of franchise-altering draft class. I mean, you could have multiple starters and like high-level starters on both sides of the ball, which any team would sign up for that from a single draft class in a heartbeat. So while, as you mentioned, while some of the early draft classes, there have been hits and misses, this last one definitely seems like more hits than misses so far. And that could go a long way in changing the direction of the future of this organization. And then the last thing I will say is that each offseason, since Joe Schoen has arrived, he's had a little more room to make, trades or free agent signings each offseason. The first year, there was no room at all. Like, they were so strapped for cash. I think Mark Lewinsky and Tyrod were the only two signings that offseason of more than like minimum level money, and neither of those guys even signed for big deals. Each offseason, as we've gotten, 2022, 2023, now 2024, Joe Schoen has had a little more room, a little more money to spend, and have brought guys in that have almost immediately made very good, positive contributions. Brian Burns, Jermaine Illuminor, John Runyon on the offensive line. Like, those are probably the three biggest offseason acquisitions this past season. Mm-hmm. And all three of them have so far paid dividends. So, the next year, the Giants, I believe, will have the most cap space that they've had under Joe Schoen. Obviously, as of right now, and if there's a potential move at the quarterback position down the road, I believe that they would then have the most cap space that Joe Schoen has ever had as GM with the Giants, which gives him more room, obviously, to make more moves and bring more guys in that fit what they want to do on the field and what they're trying to build off the field and in the locker room. So I get it. The last decade plus has been very frustrating. Everyone is frustrated here. But I have seen this season reasons to be optimistic about the future.
Absolutely. Mr. Sitek, good stuff, my friend. All right, he's hearing this for the first time. So it'll be tomorrow, BBK, Madeline, and O'Hara at 12:30. Thursday, it'll be me and Dottino. Friday, it'll be Sitek and Dottino. And then Sitek will be on the Hangout on Wednesday morning with Madeline and Russ. So make sure you check out all of our podcasts during the week. As I mentioned, Giants Huddle coming up later today, myself and Brian Baldinger. You'll have Papa's Perspective later on in the week with Bob Robustelli talking about the book about his dad. That and a whole lot more. So stay tuned to all of our content throughout the week. Giants.com/podcast or the Giants app. Just search for Giants Podcast Network on your favorite podcast platform. For Matt, I'm Schmelk. We'll see you tomorrow at 12:30 for another Big Blue Kickoff Live.